Hi, this is Irv Shapiro with the Dr. Vex channel. And today I'm going to talk about what may be the most revolutionary advancement in 3D printing for the home user of these technologies in years, or at least it has that potential. And the question we'll look at today is whether this little box from Creality, called the Creality Wi-Fi Box, has the ability to change the way we do 3D printing, or maybe it's not there yet. So stay tuned, and we're going to learn something together. Okay, folks, this is a video that you're going to want to follow up on because it's about this new device from Creality, and there's going to be additional information in the future. So make sure you subscribe to this channel and click the bell so you're notified about future videos. Let's begin by looking at what Creality says about the Wi-Fi box. So let's look at the screen here together. Mark Cheng, the project manager at Creality, says, Creality Cloud is going to be, in bold here, the most versatile 3D printing app in the market. I think marketing is a typo. When matched with a self-developed Wi-Fi box by Creality, Creality Cloud will support the online printing, online slicing, and online library. In addition, and it's clear from reading this was a translation. In addition, Creality Cloud also has an interactive social function, which will enable users to directly reach other professional designers, makers. This is very important, this next part, and I'll show this to you because this is a big change for Creality. Creality engineers and even real-time online customer service from Creality. And we'll look at what they're doing already with Creality Cloud, at least the app, in just a moment. So now we know Creality thinks this is going to make a significant change in the world of 3D printing for, let's not call it consumers, but hobbyists, I think is the right term. I don't think you're going to see a 3D printer on a mom or dad's desk that they use day to day to do their work, as much as you're going to see a 3D printer in some place where you might have a sewing machine or you might have a table saw. It's a hobbyist tool that will be used in a home environment. And this device, more importantly, the Creality Cloud, has the potential to make that possible. So as you watch this video today, you'll see those features that have the potential, and we'll review whether they're finished yet, whether they're ready to meet that challenge. So let's start with a classical unboxing. Now, I ordered 2 of these directly from Creality, and let's look at this next screen for a minute. You can see here that right now this box sells for $45 on the Creality Direct website. Over the past few months, it's been available from anywhere from $10 to this $45 price. In fact, there's still some for much less available on various internet e-commerce websites. The difference in some cases are the components it comes with. So we're going to look at the version I bought directly from Creality. I paid for 2 of these. I wanted to make sure that if there was a problem, I could still do the review. They came taped up very completely with a label on the outside. I pulled the tape off, and you can see here that it's got some instructions. The instructions are in both Chinese and English, and inside it's actually packaged very nicely. This is a very dense foam. So let's first look at the device. The device is about the size of a deck of playing cards and has a little bit of plastic on the outside. We'll take that off. And there's really not much to it. So let's look at what else is in the box. Underneath in the box, and this is a very dense foam, you'll see 2 cables and an adapter. And what that is one of these cables, this one right here, goes between USB and micro USB, and that's used right over here for the power. Now the power is listed on here as 5 volt, 2.4 amps. I took a standard phone charger, which may or may not be truly 2.4 amps, and used it, and I had no difficulty at all. So they do not give you the USB charger. I think a lot of companies are deciding that people have a lot of those chargers around. It's a way to cut costs. These are very nice braided cables. The second cable is another cable. In this case, it's for your printer. And because some of the Creality printers use the larger type of USB connector, they give you an adapter. So it will work with any of the Creality printers. I'm not sure it will work with any 3D printer, but if you have USB on one end, you can use whatever cable you have with your 3D printer. Which brings us to an interesting point. Creality is positioning this as usable with their printers, but also with other printers. And we'll talk about a little bit of a limitation. Right now, the online slicer from Creality does only support Marlin. Not sure whether that will hold for the future. So, very nicely packaged, should be relatively easy to use. Now, let's take a look next at how you would use this device and what the ecosystem looks like. Then we'll go back and I'll show you what the installation steps are, share with you some gotchas in the installation steps, and then I'll wrap up the overall video. Now let's look at the physical characteristics of the box, and we're going to look at a picture on the screen instead of looking at the actual box. It'll be just a little easier to view. It comes with both Wi-Fi and an RJ45 network port. You'll see in a minute that's important because I had trouble with the Wi-Fi, but I can explain to you what to do to solve that problem. So I did actually use my box initially hardwired to a router. 2 USB connectors for a printer and a camera. Yes, a webcam. However, that support isn't activated yet. They claim it will be available in the next release. A micro USB power interface. A TF card interface, that's a micro SD card, the same card that you use in most of the newer Ender printers, and a reset button. Now, the way you use this is really what's most important. It's part of a new ecosystem that Creality is building. The first part of that ecosystem is an app that you run on your phone, and we can look at that app here, but I'll look at it on the screen with you because it'll be a little bit easier to see. So on the left side, you'll see the display screen that you first see when you start the app. Then in the middle, you'll see there are 2 tabs, Groups and Models. And this is really interesting. Groups is a messaging application that Creality is going to use, it appears, to communicate with both users and the broader community. Just in the last week or so, they've begun posting a bunch of small, short videos, very interesting videos. There's no sound. There's an English language text over on these videos, and they're tutorials. There's some tutorials for the new Ender 2, Ender 3 version 2. There are tutorials for some of the new CR model printers. There are even some tutorials for the original Ender printers. And so this appears to be a way they're going to communicate with end users. The second tab, the Model tab, and we'll see it on the screen, is sort of a Thingiverse or Prusa models sort of alternative. It does appear there are hundreds, if not thousands, of models already over there. And many of the models have a flag applied by Creality saying that the ownership of this model is unknown. If you don't think we should have this model up, please contact us, and they give you an address. So they're trying to very rapidly build the repository of models. Now, the way you use those models is very interesting, but before we get to that, let's go back to the screen and look at the back end. The back end of this ecosystem is a new site called model.creality.com. And it's the same repository of models online from your computer, but without all of the capabilities. And we'll see what I mean in a minute. So let's actually look at this together. In the corner here, you can switch between Chinese and English. You have the ability to register and then sign in. I'm already logged in here. You can see Dr. Vax. And then you can add your own repository of models. I did not see, let me take a look at one of the models I've added. I did not see off the top a way to say whether a model was public or private. It appears they're all public. You can give each model a description, and then your models become part of the overall ecosystem. And you can see here there are quite a number of models. Actually, some very interesting, nice models. So when you go to a model on the website, you have the ability to like it, to post a comment. If you click here, you have the ability to copy a link to this model. You'll see the description here is nonsense. You also, down at the bottom, since a model can consist of multiple parts, you can list multiple parts, and then you have the ability to download the STL file, to slice the model, or to look at it in 3D. The 3D viewer actually works quite nicely. Here we can look at it in 3D. However, when you click on Slice, you get a pop-up telling you to download the phone app. So you can slice these models, and I'll show you this in a minute, from your phone, but right now you can't do it from the web. That seems like it's just not done yet. In fact, on the web app, you'll periodically see some debug information on the page. It's not showing up right now. The other day I was seeing some debug information. So it's clear this is a work in progress. I've dug under the covers. It's an application built in an environment called Vue, which is a portable web environment. It's not clear if they're using that same environment in some way for the mobile app. I wouldn't be surprised. So this is actually quite nice. There are quite a number of models out here. And you can look through them in a variety of ways, but the website's not completely finished yet. So now let's go back to the app. In the app, when you click on the Me tab, you'll see it here on this center picture, the Me tab. When you click on the Me tab, you go to a page where you can register or log in. You can do that from either the web or from the device. Once you're logged in, you have the ability to look at your various models, to group models, to make posts, to look at models you've previously sliced and reprint them, to look at models you've previously printed and reprint them. So the capabilities are quite nice. When you click on the gear in the corner, you'll go to settings. You can reset your network settings. You can remove the device, and you can update the firmware. And I have successfully done a firmware upgrade of this box. Now, when you select a model, you'll see these icons, the same icons I showed you on the screen. The first icon is to print a model where there's an existing slice of that model. You can slice a model, or you can look at the 3D viewer. The 3D viewer is very similar to 3D viewer online on the web. When you go to slice a model, though, what you're seeing is sort of a front end on what appears to be a variant of Cura. And in fact, when I looked into the G code produced, it's called the Creality Web Slicer or something like that, but it's clearly a Cura variation. It doesn't have all of the features that in 4.x of Cura, but it appears to be quite good. And in fact, I printed a number of models that I downloaded from their repository and printed on my Ender 3 V2. The prints were spectacular. The prints were really good. There's a little bit of an elephant foot. I think I would tweak the temperature. I used all default settings, which really brings us to part of the Creality goal. Part of the Creality goal is you buy a printer from Creality, you take it out of the box, maybe there's some assembly, but then you download an app to your phone and you start printing. Now, once you've sliced a model, and we can look at the left-hand screen here, you can see this is cutting off a little bit. It gives you information about the slice, print time estimates. You also can put in your own filament specs into the model. Then when you say print, it automatically sends it to the box and starts the printer. Now here's something that's really quite interesting. This box is communicating with a back-end internet server and creating a secure tunnel. What that means is that you do not have to have an open access to this box from the outside world. It's reaching out and then creating that connection. And yet you can use this app anywhere. You don't have to be on the same network. You could be on a cell phone link starting a print or looking to see how far a print has gone since you left. Now, once they add a camera, this is really very interesting. And now they're beginning to overlap into the realm of Octoprint. Now, I'm a big Octoprint proponent, but Octoprint does require that you buy a separate Raspberry Pi, you install the software, you do some configuration. Maybe it's a little bit complex for that consumer hobbyist that wants to take the printer out of the box and start printing. With this alternative, if the installation's easy, you take the printer out of the box, you take this out of the box, you start printing, and we'll look at the installation together. Let's talk about configuration. Well, they did a couple things right. There's a QR code on the bottom of your box that has all the configuration information. So if we look at the screen, to add a device, you click on the plus in the application under the device tab. It gives you some information on a screen, you click next, and then it turns your camera on. Now, on an iPhone, it asks for permission to use the camera that's built into the iPhone. You'll see on this next picture, I don't have the box lined up with the QR code because it's so sensitive that as soon as you get it close to lined up, it recognized it. So that worked really, really well. Now let's take you through the next step of the configuration. Next, it asked me to assign a name. I assigned a name. I clicked done. It asked me if I wanted to join the Creality Cloud Wi-Fi network. So clearly this device is providing a network. You join that network so you can communicate with it, and that will allow you to further configure your box. I said yes. Now on the next screen, before I was able to choose the network I wanted to use for the box, I got a message from iOS saying my Wi-Fi network I'm connected with doesn't seem to be working properly. Do I want to switch to my cell phone network? If you say yes, it will break the installation. So just say, keep trying. Don't say yes. You want to stay connected. You want that Wi-Fi network to stay connected. Then you select the Wi-Fi network you want. It prompts you for your password. You enter it in, and your box comes up working. Sometimes. When I first connected my box, I couldn't get Wi-Fi to work at all. Now, I thought at first it was because I have an Eero network. I have a mesh Wi-Fi network in my house with multiple routers spread about, and I use a single SID for 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz bands. So I took and I went to my Comcast router, my Xfinity router, and I set up another network that was just 2.4 gigahertz, because actually in the fine print they say it only supports 2.4 gigahertz. And I tried connecting to that over Wi-Fi. Still wouldn't connect. So I plugged in an Ethernet cable and everything finished up and I was off and running, was able to test it. But then I went back and I tried to figure out what was wrong. So the first thing I did is I checked for a firmware upgrade. I upgraded the firmware. I tried to connect to Wi-Fi again. Same mistake. I couldn't get this box to connect to Wi-Fi. Then I said, I'm going to make everything simpler. I actually set up a network off my iMac that I was sure was 2.4 gigahertz with a very simple name, just a few characters, and a very simple password. I set it up, I clicked on the plus, I scanned the QR code, connected that network right away. So what I realized was that if your SID has any spaces in it, I don't know about special characters, but I know spaces, it will break the connection. This device cannot connect to an SID, to a Wi-Fi network with a name that has a space in it. So if your Wi-Fi network at home has spaces in it, this won't work for you. You'll need to set up another network. Once I took the spaces out, I went back, I tried it on other networks, even using a network that had 2.4 and 5 gigahertz networks on the same SID, and it worked fine. Then, as I showed you earlier, I did a number of prints. The quality was excellent. But is this really going to change the way we use 3D printers? So let's look at a slide together. Well, first, as I've pointed out, the Wi-Fi support's a little bit buggy. The space issue is something they need to add to their documentation or fix. The camera support's not there yet. And I use Octoprint on most of my 3D printers. I have a bunch of them. I'm often running multiple tests at the same time. Camera support's a big deal for me. So it'll be obviously the hardware is there. There's the extra USB ports, but it'll be interesting to see how soon they're able to add camera support and how it will compare with the quality of Octoprint. Number 3, right now, slicing is only available from a phone. That seems to be just a software development effort. I would expect you'll see slicing and the ability to print come to the website. Right now, the website's basically the back end for the app with some front end capabilities. So we'll see how that works out as we move along, because the combination of the website, the device, and the printers access from anywhere with the group communications features is quite intriguing. The last point is a bit of a nuance. When you select a printer from the Creality list, they let you set many of the parameters for your slice. The filament type you're using, the temperatures you want to print at, many of the typical slicer capabilities, even more advanced capabilities are all there. What you cannot do for an existing printer is change the G-code start or end code. At least I couldn't figure out how to do it. Now, maybe it's there somewhere and I just missed it, but I couldn't figure it out. So my Ender 3 version 2 has a BL Touch on it. So I actually took and selected the option to use a new printer that they had not defined. I used all the defaults, but I put in a G29 so my BL Touch would actually probe the bed before it printed. So the auto bed leveling would run. And as I said, even though I didn't select Ender 3 version 2, I selected their generic printer and modified it slightly. It came out quite nicely. So it would be nice if they added the ability to edit your start code and your end code, things you often want to do when using their printer. Now, how does this compare to the obvious alternative, which is Octoprint? Well, it's not as advanced. This is like a beta release, and Octoprint is a mature product. There are many, many more things with Octoprint plugins that you can do with Octoprint. However, if you know about the SID issue, this is really trivial to install and set up. And it's a little less expensive because even at the full price of $45, you get the device, you get the cables, you get everything but the power supply. And you don't have to assemble your own Raspberry Pi, put it in a case. A Raspberry Pi with a case and a power supply probably runs you 70 or 80 bucks, Depending on what you're doing, this is 45, so this is more cost effective. You do need two things I want to emphasize, because I didn't point out before, it doesn't ship with a micro SD card, a TF card. You have to provide your own. You can get those for $8 to $10. I have a 16 gig card in here, it seems to be fine. And it doesn't have the power supply. So overall, for a first release, I would call this a beta release. This shows enormous promise. I'm very excited to track this over the next couple of months. For my production use right now, I'm going to stick with Octoprint. Well, folks, I hope you found this useful. If nothing else, learning about the spaces in the SID is going to save you a lot of aggravations if you go to use one of these boxes. If you did find it useful, click on the bell, subscribe to the channel, you know the drill, share the URL with other people, and let's continue to learn together.